going to Wales.
He said wrong turn.
What's in Wales?
Green.
Tom Jones Museum.
Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody's happy to sit in new seats.
Huh?
Everybody's got new seats.
Music fair.
Halfway through, everybody's got to get out.
Change. The music stops, everybody grabs a chair.
Andy, do you have anything?
A couple things. I met with, SmartWalk got me in touch with an architect he's out of Illinois somewhere, but we walked around and looked at the possibility of relocating the elevator. Elevators, he asked me if I was aware of what the makeup of an elevator is now. A lot of them don't use that bottom cylinder anymore. It's all self-contained. It's almost a self-contained unit. Everything's on top of it now.
It's like a climber, some sort. Like it's.
I don't know. We were in Chicago last week. You ever been to Water Tower where they've got those elevators that, of course, they're going up quite a few floors, and everything's kind of up on top of the elevator, and they just kind of go up and down a little rail.
So it just motors that climb up a track, basically.
Cable
Okay, so it is mounted to something.
mounted on top, and the cable pulls up, rolls up, and lets out as needed.
If you put it on the
So
outside of the building,
this-
you'd have to have that, right? On the outside.
It was where your structure needs to be. So I would assume that if you put a hydraulic cylinder in the ground, you've got the earth as your base. Whereas if you're mounting cables to something, it's going to have to be something rather substantial in the structure, which would almost limit you.
There's not much. I was sitting there looking to see what that was run on. There's just kind of a couple rails on each side that it guides and holds it, but it.
But the weight's hanging from something. You're hanging off of something above you,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that would be a structural problem, right, to work through. You had to have the right.
Well, they make a frame and.
Right. That you build a big.
You just build a box. So you build like a steel box with just so it's supported from the base.
Yeah, pillared with
You
the
go
top
on
and.
Yeah. Kind of like a car jack.
Block and tackle.
You know, you got rails that go up, and then it.
Mhm. So you wouldn't just go off of a beam in the ceiling. You wouldn't.
No.
Through there, you
And
would,
it says it requires
You can't
very
tie
little.
off the bell tower.
well, just pull through. You could smash it.
Every time the bell rings,
It flops a little.
Lost another one.
oops.
But it was interesting. He isn't the architect that is going to be handling it. Got the flu. So this is one of the owners of the company, but he will not be the one that. But he did give me ideas, and we walked around the courthouse and looked at things.
So was it? Did you feel like he was saying it's reasonable, it's possible, or
Yeah.
was it? You guys are out of your mind.
No, it sounded like it's a possibility. I said, how much? He goes, I can't tell you that yet. So figures. I said, figures are what.
Everything's possible. for
Everything's
right now.
possible if you've got enough money. But.
Easily under 10 million. Is quote.
And he looked at the roof too, and gave me, said that we'll look at. He's aware of different companies in the area that do that type of roof too.
And we kind of have a bid for the roof already, right? With someone quoted you recently, you were talking about replacing shingles and stuff like that.
They didn't quote me. They just
gave you a ballpark
Well,
of what it
yeah.
probably would.
we had West-Jang and Elsner when they came through. He told me he thought it'd be around $500,000 to do the roof, 400 to 500,000. But that's all. It's kind of like Aaron talking about people wanting to building the bridge. If everybody's busy, it's more expensive.
Sure.
So it's just something. But the more people you get to look at it, the better chance you have of getting a better price. So, but I'm gonna meet with him again, with the guy that I want to meet with, and we'll look over it. And we talked to, he came down to your place too, didn't he? Did he come to the jail?
Yeah, Thursday.
I think it was Thursday.
Yeah.
So with was the engineer for the water?
Plumbing, yeah.
Plumbing. Okay. So they're deep into doing their research, and hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll sit down and they'll have some figures for us, so.
They didn't say anything in the last couple of meetings with Ori, anything brought up about solar or anything like that. That was such a big piece, and we haven't heard much about it. I know that was,
He said something to me that he was gonna have to go out to the airport. He goes, they've only got, they don't have three-phase at the airport. And I said, well, it ought to be pretty close to there, because remember that Ram manufacturing that used to be there? I'm sure that building
That stuff would surely run.
had to have three-phase.
Yeah.
Cause that was a lot of welding, a lot of,
Overhead cranes. And
yeah, I said, so it ought to, he goes, okay, well, he goes, if they've got it close, then that'll be good. He goes, well, that has, initially was a problem, but I said, go out there and look, cause I'm sure that there's three-phase at that building, which was right next to the airport.
the Chips building now, the big,
Yeah.
So, he was gonna go out there and look at that. This was on Thursday, so I looked this morning, he hadn't gotten with me yet on anything,
okay.
so. Seemed I had something else, but I'll think of it later. That's all I got.
Floor stuff, did you ever get hold of what was the last, I apologize.
Ross?
No, the floor, that too, that's another one I'm talking about.
No, I haven't
The
got back with
bathroom
the guy.
floor,
We went,
I was with you, but I don't
we
remember.
went and looked at it. I kinda think we're gonna have to figure out, before you do the floor, you're gonna figure out what you're gonna do there. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
any number of things.
you can't go do the floor and then come in and decide you wanna remodel the bathroom afterwards. I think it needs to be,
Well, so the initial, kind of where we started at was just redo the floors and keep that current setup as is. Now, there's problems with that as far as, width and things like that.
right,
And then you mentioned that you thought you'd have to pull up the dividers in order to put the floor in.
but those dividers are pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember?
Yeah, I mean, the initial
I mean, I
plan was just take Dave was just gonna, a piece of steel, and we would cut that up as appropriate, and part of it would go on the urinal side of that divider.
Okay.
But, I mean, we can get way deep in the weeds on that bathroom, it's just, we gotta decide
What we're gonna do.
what the best answer is for now.
Wow.
So,
And I don't think those dividers are usable. And they were-
I mean, once
they
we,
were
once
rusty
we,
at
once
the
we tear them
bottom.
out, I mean, shit,
They're
we'll
plastic.
buy new ones, right?
Yeah, right.
So, if that's what we need to put the floor in, then then we might as well have that ready to go. And then once we
Right.
pull the dividers out, then, we talk about how many holes we need and things like that.
Right.
I mean, yes, that would be a question for Augie. Like, if we have a requirement as far as a public bathroom and what that looks like, I don't even know, for that building.
I think, I don't know, I probably ought to ask the architect.
Nope, it's
Sorry,
off.
guys, this is me.
Maybe I'll
Gary.
ask the architect.
I don't have
Right, it's you, not
I mean,
me.
he'd know what specs are on a building.
Yeah, I mean, we're already limited as far as the size of that building and the number of people that can be in there in any given week.
Right.
So I imagine we probably gotta keep it at 3, but, do we pull that sink out and pull out the urinal and then, there's any number of iterations that we can
I
look
don't know if
at.
I've ever went in there and there wasn't, if there's ever been anybody else in there.
You say that there hasn't been anybody
Yeah, I mean,
else?
I don't think
Probably knew you were
maybe
coming.
somebody walking out as I'm walking in or something. I can't ever remember even walking in there.
Not even like on court day or something where there's higher traffic flow.
I mean, I'm not in there a lot, but
Good.
it's on my hanging place.
hiding.
Hand out Dracar and fucking hand wipes.
Yeah,
Just the service we provide.
welcome to the courthouse.
Yeah.
Welcome to the courthouse. Come
There
in.
is some sanitizer on the way, which is good.
So I mean, I think, status quo in the women's room, it's fine.
I think the women's
In
room
general.
is in pretty good, it's pretty good shape.
So the question would be, would we have them do the floors in there just because they're already there, and if so, do we pull the dividers out? If we pull the dividers out, can you put them back in, or do you need to get new ones? Do you get, like, these are all,
I need to relook at those in there.
You know, where the urinal is in the men's room, you know, of course, it's like the old, in the old schools that go clear to the ground. Can it be pulled out, level that floor out and just put a wall mount?
we talked about that a little bit.
It's-
We had to scream about
Right,
it too.
it's easier said than done, I mean, cause
Your
your
plumbing, your
wall
drain
mount
field.
urinals hang on the wall,
Right,
and the plumbing is in the wall, well, your drain is in the floor there. Now, I don't know whether you could
so what if we,
put the wall and, where that's front, and then,
well, where that's boxed in, you'll make that box right there at that urinal. Like, can we just go ahead and box that whole thing in, move a wall mount urinal out, and you still, I mean, you're,
move it out like 4 inches, and then your drain
yeah, whatever
is
it
in the
is,
wall.
6 inches or 4 inches or
Yeah.
something like that.
That might be
I
possible.
mean, it basically, just a hidden wall is all it amount to.
That's what,
Labyrinth in progress back there anyway. We've got walls in there now that weren't
Well, that's
originally.
hard to
Right.
what you find when you go to turn into them walls.
Mhm. Well, and that might work too, if you just put a small divider there by the sink, that would probably be sufficient, and again, I don't know what the code is and all
I
that.
suppose you could probably go in and cut
Right now, I mean,
cut
for-
down to the drain and tap onto it and move it up, back it up, and put it in the wall. You're
like,
gonna redo the floor anyway.
and that's not ideal, I mean, for me, like, both my arms touch the walls when I'm using the, which is disgusting anyway, so.
Put that stuff on your arm when you walk.
Yeah, I gotta butter myself.
You
to
go
get
in
in and out.
sideways.
Yeah.
Like
That's
this.
why you got the sanitizer on.
You gotta have a little more
First love to have
control
problem.
over your equipment, you know?
Love to have a
What
problem
are you
doing it
talking about?
sideways.
My shoulders, that was what, this was touching the sides.
I know, I knew exactly
Okay.
what you said.
I wouldn't say something, I get in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this on film?
Um,
Okay.
And
I
then,
get,
Okay.
sorry if I should thought,
no, I just, it's kind of it's complicated, because I think you gotta do some things first, next thing second.
that's unique, that's the first time we've had a situation like that. Alright, well, as I say, it doesn't sound like we're gonna have someone to work on it anytime soon, other than, I think we get the 4 people in, but the rest,
Right. 4 people ain't, whenever we're ready, I mean, he said.
we have Bob do demo, if we came to a
Have Bob do
decision.
demo, yeah.
Ever do the floor in the upstairs bathroom, remember, what's his name, wanted to put in a floor.
We did, I don't remember doing the floor, but I had Mark Sullivan, remember he put a new vanity in there, and actually he got hot and cold water now, which
Edward
he didn't
wanted
have
to put in
before.
a floor, remember that?
Both kinds of water.
Yeah.
Woo! We put a small, on-demand water heater under that, that's why we put a vanity in there, cause we put a small on-demand water heater under there. And so,
In the executive washroom.
yeah,
Was Dave gonna do the downstairs restroom?
Well, so our original discussion, yes, and now we've kinda come back around where,
you kinda gotta do what he's gonna do first before you can have him do the
So-
floor.
When can he get to it?
excellent question. You know, when
Well,
he
he
gets
was
to
supposed to got, a year ago, got to all the other security
the
stuff.
security pieces. Yeah.
Your contractors, that's the way they are. I mean, they,
So, in other words, he,
and the better you are, the harder it is to get them, because there
maybe we
is,
need to look at somebody else.
Well, and that's acceptable, it's just a matter of what we're asking for, and I don't think we are at 100% on that yet, as it pertains to the bathrooms. The doors, we've kinda come up, the first step of the security upgrades, we kinda came to a decision on and gave Dave kinda what we wanted, and then we got held up with keypads and stuff, so that, at this point, beyond the doors for those 2 offices, Mark's and the,
Probation.
Probation, thank you. We're kind of in a standstill because of all the other stuff we got going with the raw stuff. Because,
I told Ross to get, put something together so we got something for the next board meeting.
to put out in the paper for bid
Yeah.
with the buzzers or the,
I said, he remember, he kind of fine tuned the list that came from the company in Terre Haute, so I said, let's put that together and we'll get it to where we can approve, you basically approve the bidding process on those. Because when we were all up there, and I think that would come out of courthouse security, I mean, it's all security for the courthouse, so.
everything minus the.
He said
the
he'd
airport
have that ready.
Health department.
gotta be, I told March 13th, March 13th, I think,
Okay.
so he'll have that ready.
For the study session.
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, if you know somebody who is faster on call to fix stuff, I'm sure it'd be a bang up job. You know, that's kind of where we're at. So, yeah, we just gotta figure out what's feasible to get done, and what we think we can get done for
What we can afford.
We kind of started at 5,000, right?
Right.
So, yeah, break that down, I guess, because it's probably going to be at least 1,000 for the floor,
Yeah.
probably. And then
Yeah,
if we
I'd
could-
say at
and you
least.
were talking, had some experience with those dividers. Those would probably be
Yeah.
close to 1,000.
Probably, I can't remember, because I put them all in my place, and I don't think I suppose you can still get the metal ones, but mine were a laminate, and they're fine. But I don't recall what I gave for them, but that was 25 years ago, so. But they don't give that stuff away.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we still might be able to get done what we need to get done for 5,000.
I think close.
But it just comes down to what it needs to look like, and I guess the next step is finding out what the code is and what our responsibilities are, and then we can decide if we wanna keep or call, so. Shut up.
I did,
Okay,
Andy.
that's it.
Mr. Bruner?
I have nothing.
I don't have anything.
I knew
Jeez, you guys are.
it. Next.
Good thing I got stuff. Yes, we got extras. Beyond what I already have. So, you guys weren't at the meeting here on Thursday, so I would, encourage your input to what we have on here, and, cause this is kind of the last group, look at this prior to it going, prior to going out, and so still planning on hopefully getting it out this week or at the very latest next week. So, this is the bid spec. I don't recall if I kind of laid this out to the board previously, but we decided to break this into two parts. One, kind of, hey, here's what you have to include in your bid, which is items 1 through 3. And then the second set, which is basically on 2 pages on the back there, I was trying to conserve paper, basically what the actual contract would entail, what you're responsible for. So basically, items 1 through 3 in that first section, you basically want to have when you put your bids in April, and then everything else you need to have in place by June 1. And so, the first one, so anything in green is stuff that is basically a recent change or basically put in front of everybody to get your input on. So, then probably the most complex one is just the first one. So under vehicles, under 1, which again could be argued we could break that into 2 pieces, but it kind of pulls together. So 4 ambulances and 1 paramedic assist vehicle was kind of the consensus. That was just there at the meeting and based upon the following. So, what this next piece does is my attempt to make it look like what's currently in place, right? So, two paramedic ambulances, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. However, during overnight period, it would be permissible to have 1 staffed ambulance at the station and 1 crew called in if the first ambulance is dispatched, which is basically what they're doing now. And then I just add not as a shall, but a should, a 3rd ambulance and crew staff during business hours preferred. So that's basically what the current service looks like. During 8 to 5, there's basically 3 ambulances and crews available. The rest is on a 24-hour cycle with 2 crews in during daylight hours, we'll call it 8 to 8, 7 to 7, whatever. And then on the overnights, there's 1 basically crew and ambulance sitting in the bay. If they get dispatched, the next crew is on a 10-minute tether they're already coming in for the next call. And so just our mandate is basically maintaining current level of service, that's, you know, what that looks like. And so I tried to put something on there that doesn't dictate to the company, you know, how to actually set up their scheduling, but covers, you know, what coverage should look like. And so the individual hours and all the other pieces I left out. So as a start there, I'm just gonna open up to questions and concerns, and please, Verizon, feel free to chime in on that as well.
I think if you guys or the board is satisfied the way the literature currently reads, I know at least based on our current position, you know, we're staffed such where we have 2 ambulances 24/7, 365 that are on station ready to go. So of course, the requirements as they're written here, I mean, if everyone is satisfied with that, seems, you know, fine to me. But in our position, I can at least, you know, indicate what we're capable of currently.
What is your position on the paramedic assist vehicle?
It's in my capital budget contingent upon a contract.
Um,
And it would be just a supervisor car. The
okay.
exact same setup as ECSSA has.
And I assume that's pretty standard that, you know, any ambulance service, whoever's in charge is a paramedic. I mean, it's not necessarily always the case, but, you know, we're basically working on what's in place, and so I had questions about whether or not the paramedic assist vehicle was necessary, if that is a pretty standard fit, or if that's something that's unusual. Certainly there are scenarios, you know, with Northern Area County or whatever, where that's a nice to have, but, you know, I just was curious what you guys.
It's definitely not unusual. A lot of ambulance services, and of course in a bigger metropolitan area like Champaign-Urbana, Carl, OSF, they both utilize a jump car, if you will. In our case here, being in a rural area, I still think it's beneficial simply because if you do get an overflow of calls, you have that backup vehicle, I guess for lack of a better term, that can run out ahead of the transport vehicle to start that care. Because depending on the situation, the sooner you start that care, the better the outcome.
Right, and that was something else that Eric and Nicole mentioned about, you know, with the requirements we have in as far as structure fires and brush fires and things like that, sometimes it's nice to have that flex.
Absolutely.
That's not another ambulance, so, okay, that's good to know. So the way this is set up currently is, you know, 2 required, 1 is a should, and then we're asking for 4 ambulances on June 1. So that's another one that, you know, does that pass the sniff test for everybody? I think it's reasonable. You know, again, in our hierarchy of responsibility in my mind, first one is same level of service, 2 is cast as broad a net as possible, you know, and so trying to walk that, that line, you know, is that, could the same thing be done with 3 ambulances with a reasonable assurance that if something were to happen, another ambulance could be put in place?
Yes. I think by asking, this is not Horizon speaking, this is taxpayer taken off of Horizon hat. I think asking for 4 paramedic ambulances in a county of this size is possible by all means. And anybody's gonna love to do that. It is a cost to the taxpayer. There is not volume to support 4 ambulances. There is not volume technically to support 3. I can very well see 2 all the time not being on call. I like the 30 seconds out the door rule versus 10 minutes because, I mean, just from having instances where a police officer is on scene and he's requesting because he's got a psychiatric patient, if I've got an ambulance on the way to Carl taking a patient, then that police officer's sitting there with that crazy person for quite some time waiting on a rig, you know. So to force a business to have 4, by all means, Horizon has the pockets, they can do that. I'm not saying that. It's just, I feel like as a taxpayer, that cost is going to be put into that bid proposal, and that's going to, in turn, potentially increase that cost. Just my opinion. But if that's what you're going off of what you currently have, and that's what you think is necessary, we'll meet that bid demand.
Sure. So what's a scenario look like for you currently, if one of your, I mean, I realize you really don't have any kind of contractual obligation, but let's say, you know, you're on a rural run with one of your ambulances and you hit a deer and, you know, total it. You know, what's your turnaround? How quickly can you get another ambulance backing up in service?
Well, so as you may or may not be aware, ordering ambulances and getting ambulances is a very lengthy process.
Right.
They're about anywhere from 190 to 270 days out from the date of order. So, but a lot of companies, and specifically 2 of the 3 that we have worked with, have what is considered a loaner program. And so they have loaners within the state of Illinois so that they meet the Illinois Department of Public Health regulations. If I have a vehicle that's going out for maintenance for some length of time, for instance, I had an oxygen leak in one of my rigs several months ago. It was going to be out for a week in St. Louis at a maintenance facility. They gave me a loaner for a week. I had to swing it through Springfield, get a sticker, a blessing through the state, swing it through Champaign on its way home, get Carl to bless it, and then it was here for a week.
So within 24 hours, you're able to get another one. I guess that's was the concern, you know, is they're gonna take a week before you get that extra one,
Sure.
and you're gonna be down an ambulance and not able to.
Right, now
Handle it.
sometimes it's, like, I can just speak to our business model because we
Right.
own ours and that's the companies that we went through to purchase those, like, you know, for lay terms, Ford or Chevy or whatever. But maybe you went through Dodge and Dodge doesn't offer that sort of program. We made sure that when we bought the 2 we bought, that was part of the program. The one that is currently spec'd for us to come here, they have a mobile service truck that comes to your site to do the service. So they tell you you'll be back up and running in 12 hours if you have it down. But obviously in your case scenario where you've totaled an ambulance, that's gonna be something completely different. And that involves a bunch of reporting to the state and they have to take that vehicle out of service. So I do see where you're saying, if you're requiring 3 per your thing in green, you want them to have 4 because you want that spare in there. I do understand the terminology. I'm just saying I don't know that 3 is necessary for 911 volume only.
Could you change it, say, minimum of 3 with access to 4th and a certain time period, rather
Sure.
than own 4?
Sure.
Would that be a possibility?
That-
But I don't understand why you need 4 anyway,
I find it kind of funny you're asking for 4, but you're only telling them they gotta have 3 of them running the whole time. I mean,
You're
basically
really
what
only
you,
telling them that you have to have
Spare.
2, because you're saying the
Right.
3rd is preferred.
Sure, but not a shall.
And you know, that's not currently even what's
We're gonna-
happening.
Well, that
We're
could be
gonna put 4 ambulances at the hospital. You don't have a space, you're gonna put them outside somewhere, right?
We have
I
a
mean, you could make
contingency
space,
plan,
but
we have
it's-
that pole barn in the
right,
back that
right.
where we can put
Kick
up to
Scott
5.
out.
Hmm.
That's their plan. Kick Scott out.
No, Scott doesn't get it going
That's
anywhere.
what happened. If he's in there for a while.
Yeah, and so, you know, all this is just Derek typing, so.
Sure.
The 3rd ambulance piece, that's what's currently in place during business hours, right? So, I mean, I think Shaughnessy's have 5 now, again, that's open to debate on if they're all here, if they're gonna go back and forth, I don't know how that works. But, so during, you know, per them, during business, like business hours, 8 to 5, they've got that 3rd ambulance sitting there and, you know, it's usually Nicole and, other EMTs or whatever, that are there to go. So, you know, whether that's a, you know, requirement, I didn't know if that was, so I just put it there this morning as a should rather than a shall. So that would be another thing to kick around here and, you know, what do we want, what do we require?
Does
So-
the old contract specify 4 ambulances?
Well, the old
One
contract
before.
is
There's not much in it, right?
right, so,
No, it doesn't.
What it says in the old contract is shall have two ambulances 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is what's not currently
Right.
going on, and there's a question about that.
Right.
So, which is why I tried to spell that out a little better. And so what you see in front of you in green there more closely matches what is currently in place. And say my first hack at trying to write that in a cogent sentence.
First, if you only have 2 ambulances, and say for instance you're on 2 transfers,
Mhm.
there's no other ambulances available for emergencies. You know, that's, I guess, my big concern, to make sure we have ambulances for emergencies, not, you know, the transfers, you know,
Right.
that's part of it. I mean, you know, like they said, they don't do transfers now, because basically you do the majority of them. And, you know, they're available for emergency calls, but, you know, if you're, say you have 2 people staffed, 2 ambulances staffed, and they're both going to Champaign,
Sure.
then what do we do?
You know, it puts an ambulance out of service obviously for 3 hours round trip. Not having that third ambulance with the availability to call personnel at that time, that assures at least one would be able to
Right.
answer those emergency calls. But yeah, certainly see your point.
Yeah. You know, that's why I don't wanna get down to bare minimum, and then,
Three would be, that would give you the extra, you're not gonna have 3 transfers one time,
probably not.
probably not.
Yeah, I mean, you can put
Most
calls in any of this. I mean,
Most of your transfers you can schedule, I mean, you're not gonna send 3 out at once unless you
Well,
normally
most of
one come
Well,
back,
before
pick
we were
another.
in business, they did the same thing.
Most of
They
them
had
emergencies
3,
is-
they had 2 going 24/7, 365 like we did, and then they had 1 on-call truck.
Mhm.
And so when one left for a transfer, they called in that third on-call truck, and then they'd send them home, and so.
You know, I can speak factually, having worked for Edgar County previously, that when you get within close proximity to the county, you notify the crew that we're back in the area and can take a call. I can't speak to what they're doing currently, of course, I haven't worked for them for some time, but.
So in other words, you can almost, I mean, it's not like when you go out with a transfer, it's 3 hours. It's, of course, the time there, but some of the time back, you're close in the area again.
Yeah, I mean, absent the rare occasion where a transfer may go to St. Louis or Indianapolis, you know, 3 hours round trip is standard for Champaign, but of course Terre Haute may be an hour, hour and 15. Depends on the situation.
Right.
So does that need to be changed then? Of course, that'd be
Or discussed with you guys.
discussed.
well, like I say, we're kind of at the point where we've had our discussions, so, you know, this is over to the board. So if everybody's, I mean, I can totally see the case. Do we want to try to put an addendum in there, or add the, you know, a replacement vehicle available within 24 hours? Is that something that makes sense?
I think
I mean,
based on
that's-
if you can basically rent an ambulance, if that would, I think 4 is probably maybe a little overkill. And put something in place that, you know, that in case one of the 3 that you have goes down, that you have 24 hours to get a replacement.
Right.
If you think, for the most part, that could be done. You know, you said with your company that you deal with, and I'd say the same way with anybody else that's gonna bid, they have access to, somehow they can rent
Right, and you wouldn't be,
these.
you wouldn't be excluding ECSSA anyway, because they have 5, so they're already exceeding what the
Right.
vehicle limitation is currently. Any big company that would come in and bid, like American Medical Response, they're gonna have access to their own fleet of hundreds that they can move in here at any time.
So another thing that was discussed was, should by shall and third ambulance, anybody have heartache with that, or any changes they'd like to submit?
Would, clarify where would,
Last sentence.
the last sentence, okay,
Yes.
okay.
it's preferred, but if they don't wanna do it, then they don't have to.
There's no sense in putting that in there.
That's exactly why it's worded that way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can make it a shall, but is that something that we absolutely need to have? Is that, or, again, same two things that drive all this, right? Is it A, something that we absolutely need to have to maintain same level of coverage? Or two, is making it shall by should going to preclude someone from bidding on this contract? I mean, that's how I'm driving all this stuff. So those are the two things that change things for me.
What you're saying is that basically during the daytime, you're gonna have 3 staffed ambulances, 2, and then this last sentence says another one is preferred.
So the way they have it now, again, is they have the 2 trucks on the 24-hour rotation, and they go from, you know, one on 24, one that's 24 on call, you know, for 12 of it.
Right.
And then the third is just during business hours when there's somebody in the office, those 2 are qualified to jump in a truck.
So you're actually paying for 3 staffs every day.
Right, well, and so I don't
During
wanna
the daytime,
dictate that
during
either,
the
right?
daytime.
And that's the other.
Currently, Monday through Friday, they've got the 3 staffed. On the weekends, they don't.
Which still falls under, this is for me, I'm not correcting you, is how it's written in there, right?
So
So
it gets
business hours,
expensive though.
I would assume covers those, so I can make that more clear if we wanna keep this in, or if I can strike it.
Well, and, you know, they said, you know, based on the call volumes, they tell us, you know, obviously daytime is when the majority of the calls.
And I
that's
assume when most of the transfers go, if that's, you know, again, that you guys handle that now, but whoever is, you know,
when, of course, the transfers, really, that's not our
Right, that has
concern.
nothing to do with us.
right. Well,
You know,
it does if
because-
our ambulance service is the one doing the transfers.
But if they're doing
That's not our
transfer, they still
problem.
have to have
That's their problem.
they still have to have those 2 staffed
There.
ambulances
All the
in
time.
Edgar County.
That's right.
Because that's what we're.
So it's up to them
wanting
as
to
a business,
require.
if they're going to do
Yeah,
transfers, to have their own, basically to have their own ambulance to do transfers, not, don't mess with our 2. Gotta have them there.
That's outside the deal.
That's outside the deal. I can't tell them how to run their business.
Right.
But I can tell them if this is a contract, this is what I want here.
So if they have those on duty and they send one of those to Champaign, then they're violating their contract.
Right.
With that, yeah, there's no
Right.
coverage.
If they don't have someone to cover while they're gone.
Right.
So in a case like that, they would have to have, if by this, have to have 4 crews.
Which I know some
If
mutual aid
they're
is
gonna-
cover
Well, if they
part
have
of
2
that.
transfers, yeah, it would. Gonna get it.
Well, Shaughnessy's have 5 now, I think. For
Ambulances.
No, crews.
Well, yeah, but they're not on
You were here,
duty.
right? Was it 5
Well,
on the board?
yeah, that's what that's what they wrote up there. So they have the,
Plus the business hours one, which is a different
Right.
crew. So again, I don't wanna get in the business of telling a company how to staff their ambulance.
Right.
Like you said, we're in the business of telling them what we
What we
require.
want for a 911 contract, this is what we require.
So,
And
I
I
mean-
think you kinda wanna keep that at a minimum safe level for the community.
I'm with you.
Because otherwise, if you go beyond that, then it starts getting expensive.
So are you recommending that we strike that piece, the third preferred? Rhymes.
I don't think it means anything if you just say preferred.
Well, I mean, if 2 identical bids come in and one is saying, right, that's what, to me, that's what that means.
Okay.
But, you know, by what you're telling me, it sounds like, you know, as you're telling me and I'm going through your logic, it says that we don't really need to put that in there, period. Because our mandates and the business's needs will basically drive how many ambulances and crews are
Well, I
available.
mean, that doesn't have a lot of, preferred just means
Sure,
they
and
can or
and that could
cannot,
say, you know,
right, they may not want
Yeah,
it.
so we
unicorns
prefer
can
it,
fly
so
here,
what?
but I just
So
wrote that
what?
on there, like, that's not,
Yeah, there's not
Let
much.
me ask you, when you have an ambulance service, I take it, does the state require you, or do you just do it on your own? How many times, when that ambulance goes out, like, we could look at a week and say, ambulances went out, twice on Monday for this, once on Tuesday, twice on Wednesday, you know, 'cause honestly, I have no idea what kind of volume an ambulance service really, truly does. Do you?
Carl had the figures for last year, I believe. He had,
Do you?
I wanted to
I
say
don't have
it
them with me.
was somewhere close to between 14 and 1,600 calls total.
Totally.
For the,
Okay.
I wanted to say.
And of course, there's a lot of variables that go into that, cause it's just simply the nature of the business.
Sure.
It's-
1627 total, and not all of those are transports, not all of those are, you know, the district.
Okay.
I just wanna present a different scenario, and I apologize, Derek, for not being here Thursday. I didn't know about the meeting, or I would have been here Thursday to have that discussion. If you're stating here that you want 2 ambulances staffed, and then you want them to have a paramedic jump car. To Jeff's point about mutual aid, what would be the difference in having 2 ambulances in the county at all times and having your paramedic jump vehicle staffed so that they could go out and start rendering aid, and maybe they have to call Chrisman or Kansas to come and transport, or wait on, you know, that 10-minute call crew to come and staff, versus having 3 ambulances during business hours. I see a better benefit of having 2 ambulances 24/7, no one on call, just always ready to go, and then a paramedic jump car for that times when maybe they went on a 911 call and someone has broken their leg and they requested to go to Union Hospital. So you're taking 1 out of the county. Now that paramedic jump car is going to be the second up in responding, but later in your contract, you've said that there must be mutual aid agreements in place. That's utilizing your resources as far as, I feel like, cost containment overall, because really, when you say, like, Nicole, and during business hours, Nicole and one of her office staff go on a call, yes, they're a transport vehicle, I do understand the difference, but for a cost containment, Nicole is a paramedic, she can go on the jump car and go start rendering, you know, all of the care. She just can't put them in that car and take them somewhere, she's gotta wait on an ambulance to come and get them. Just a thought, just some thought-provoking thing, not meant.
Well, and so, you know, that's an interesting point, just in the fact that, you know, everything else kind of lays out and has, you know, here's our vehicle requirement, here's our contractual requirement of the service. The paramedic assist vehicle is not laid out anywhere else other than a vehicle requirement. So, you know, I mean, at this point, I'm tempted just to say, let's strike that line, right? So the rest will figure itself out. And so, you know, I expect if Shaughnessy's win the contract, they're gonna maintain their status quo. If you guys win the contract, you're gonna do your thing. And so as long as it looks reasonably similar,
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the same, if the same level of service is, you know, achieved with a different layout, I have 0 problem with that. And so that's the other pieces we're trying to, you know, lay this out is, you know, as simple and as minimum as we can be and still meet our requirements, that's a win, so.
Yeah, and I think to your point of saying, you know, your requirement is you want 2 ambulances in this county at all times. So if I send a truck to Champaign with a patient, I have to call another truck in order to meet that obligation. So that's my staffing problem, that's not your, you know, your staffing problem.
That's what
I have to take that into account as I'm writing a bid proposal.
All right.
How many times is that gonna happen? I have to go back and historically look at how many trips did I take outside of the county last year as compared to how many calls, you know, I mean, that's my homework. to do, but your job, or I'm not saying your job, but your overarching thing is how many ambulances do you want to be able to respond when people call 911 in this county?
So we change it to 3 ambulances and then strike the last sentence.
Yeah, that's what I've got right now.
What do you think?
I think that,
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think that sounds.
So, what I would just ask you all to think about as we're going through this is, you know, bidder X that comes in and says, okay, you know, I can make this work for this dollar amount, you know, is what is placed here on this page with the changes we just talked about, is there a hole where they can say, well, I'm gonna do just this, and so, you know, and somehow bring us a lower level of service. So as you go through all this, I'd like you to do that, because you gotta worst case this thing. So, you know, what would that look like if each of you were running a business where you're trying to, you know, be the low bidder here, and you're working with what's in the bid spec? Can you create a scenario where, you know, you're shortchanging the county, I guess is my ask of you as you sit around and look at this.
What verbiage do we need to put in there so that that doesn't happen?
Right.
I guess.
You know, you have to go to the lowest common denominator, and I'm gonna try to get away with as much stuff. I mean, that's just how it works, right? So, you know, is what's in there, and you know, we can refine how it is laid out there, but just the basics. I
You
mean,
mean
is that
similar to, in other words, what we've got now and what they're doing? I mean, now, I guess I assume, I understood our wording to mean we had 2 staffed all the time. Well, at certain times, I guess it, somewhere along the line, it became
right?
okay for them to staff 1, and then when that one went out, they'd call other people in. Did you think that was what we were do, what our contract said?
Well, our contract says one thing, and what they're doing is another. And I
Right,
understand
that's-
that, and that's
Well, they said there was an agreement with the group back 10 years ago or whenever
Well, if you
to
do-
allow,
If we make that agreement, then we put that in writing.
yeah.
Right.
I asked Augie if he could find it, and he's never gave me a copy,
Yeah,
and
but that'd
there,
have to be in a, like this, it'd have to be in a contract,
It had to be in a
not an
contract.
agreement.
part
No
of
one-
part of this whole
Agreement
problem is
goes
the
with
fact
water,
that this has
right?
never been bid, and you know, we need
Right.
to.
That's, I
This
guess
is one of the good things about why we're
yeah,
doing
we're
this. and,
trying to,
you know,
can't go back and change, you know,
Right.
trying to address it. But, you know, it says like during the overnight period, it will be permissible, you know, we don't say specifically what the overnight period is, you know, is it after midnight, is it after 7 o'clock?
And again, that was me trying not to dictate a schedule to someone.
Well,
Basically,
but I
20
think
on a
we-
24-hour cycle, the overnight. So I mean, if you have some way to write that, I'm all ears. I
Well,
just-
currently,
honestly,
it's
just-
supposed, you know, way it's been explained to me, is from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening, they have to.
Right. What if they want to
then-
do 8 to 8, you know, or 9 to 9?
Well-
That's why I wrote this.
I don't
That's
think
how I
we
wrote
need
it
to
up.
leave it up to them,
Right.
whoever wins the bid, we make that decision.
I don't care. As long as they're on 24 hours total with 12 hours of coverage with, you know, fully staffed 2 ambulances and on call for another 12 hours.
Okay,
You know,
that
within
on call,
reason.
I guess,
Right?
that on call, what's gonna be that time period?
That's what.
Yeah.
We gotta make that
have time
specific.
period.
I mean,
So, and
we don't do it to accommodate their schedule, we do it to what's best
so
for
what
the
do you, what would
community.
you recommend? How would you write that?
Well, all I know is based on what they told us, it was the 7 to 7. Based on the, you know, I haven't seen the figures, but that's just what they told us based on their call volume. That's the
Right.
the peak period. Would you say that's kind of a,
I
I mean,
mean, just from being in the healthcare in
Right.
this area for a while, I find it really puzzling that there's enough volume during what they say 7A to 7P that they need to have 6 people on their station, 3 crews, and then it drops off so drastically at 7 p.m. that they only have to have 2 on. That's not typically what we find. We find that there's times where you do nothing all day and you run all night.
Absolutely right.
There's
Right.
times where
I know.
you're very busy all day and you do nothing all night. And so, that's where personally I would like to see it state those 2 ambulances in this county 24/7, 365, so that the constituents have access to 2 paramedics and 2 basics and 2 transport ambulances, no matter what time of day they call. So if a lady at Brookstone falls, she's gonna get an ambulance, but if at the same time Jeff crashes his squad, he's gonna get an ambulance, sorry. At the same time, that's a bad excuse. But then if I'm the 3rd caller calling, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna have to wait, in that time period. I just find it difficult to see from the numbers that I've run just from having an emergency department 24/7. It is statistically no different day versus night. I mean, you're talking maybe a 10 to 15% decrease in a overnight period, which is not, I can't adjust my staffing any differently for 10 to 15%. That's just my 2 cents, Carl, is I really feel like,
So
if we're gonna say 2 ambulances, we should take out the whole call piece in general. And I understand there's costs associated with that. People are expensive.
Right.
But
That's
if
your
you're,
biggest expense.
it is your biggest expense, but I also feel like, we have people that, there's multiple nursing homes in this area that house a lot of elderly people. They are constantly needing ambulance transport. We've got a lot of, travelers traveling through here. We've got factories that work all night long. There's a high volume of calls that occur overnight, statistically speaking. And 10 minutes, like I said, can be a long time.
Right, exactly.
And for me, I work night shift police for the city,
Right.
always constantly victims of drug overdose, domestic battery victims, car crashes, intoxicated persons involved in an altercation. There's all manner of instances where, as law enforcement, we are summoning emergency medical services. So when one truck may be out on a transport or a 911 call that has taken them out of the picture for a few minutes, to have that second one staffed on the ready for a quicker response time, I just think you can base that argument solely off the unpredictability
So
of the business.
they're saying not to designate 7 to 7, just,
all the time.
well, I mean, if those statistics are accurate, which they probably are, that does make sense.
So one thing that's worth pointing out is, and that was a point that I wasn't clear on before, how Shaughnessy's do it currently is if that first ambulance rolls, they immediately page the backup crew. So yes, you can have a scenario where it's 10 minutes before they get to the station, worst case, but it's unlikely because that other crew is actually 10 minutes from the station after the first ambulance rolls. So, and it's worth exploring, certainly you bring a good point about, is 6 necessary, and yeah, I mean, that's, part of this discussion. The other part is what drove, I think this was D, not Eric and Nicole, to say, hey, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't meet our financial,
I think it was cost
Well-being.
containment. I think they spoke to that a little bit, was that D had presented something on cost containment and putting that staff on call at night.
So, what numbers were they looking at, or was it, not a well-researched piece? I mean, obviously, Shaughnessy's currently have a lot more than is necessary as far as anything that is laid out contractually. They have 5 ambulances, they have the crews they have, but they have maintained that particular piece. And so, that bears some review, from the 24/7. I mean, they're all good points. It's just a matter of, because I think if you go from the current model to 2x24, you would have an extra crew required. Because, and that was just the way that when he laid that out, that's how I
An
understood
extra
it.
crew for 12 hours.
For a 24-hour cycle, right? So,
12 hours.
so they currently have
12
3.
hours.
12 hours,
Right.
that makes sense.
So, because the way they're doing it now, I think, they have a 24-hour, so crew A starts their shift.
3 crews that work 24/7, and they work one day and then they're off one 24-hour period, then they're off for 2 days, and they come back again. And then they've got those second crews.
Those are
that-
just 12 and 12, you're saying?
Right.
So they're just on-call
They're
crews all the
second.
time?
Their fourth and fifth crew just work 12 hours on day shift,
Mhm.
or 7 to 7. And they've got 3 crews that work 24/7. That's the way they, I mean, I haven't seen their schedule, but that's just what they said the other night.
Mhm.
I think maybe should get a hold of them and maybe look at the call volumes, have them give us the printout of their call volume and see actually what the times are, how much percentage, you know, are at nighttime versus daytime, and maybe we can.
Can Nanette's, dispatching info, can she run a report that says like how many 911 requests came in before a certain time and then after a
Possibly.
certain time maybe? I don't know.
I can check with them and see what.
Really, about any vehicle accident, just ties up two
Yes.
ambulances automatically.
So, yeah.
At any given time, whether it's daytime or nighttime or whatever, so.
And then, of course, they go to all fires, but, you know, I guess if they're at a fire scene, can they leave, or
They can, they're there for rehab purposes, so if it's
Right.
to a point in that structural fire where, you know, whoever's the commanding officer on the scene deems they're no longer needed, they'll cut them loose. Having said that, a scenario may be presented where they get another emergency call, and they say, hey, Captain, can we get out of here, we got something going on.
and then we've got it on call through they're coming in to.
Correct.
But if you're doing most transfers, then Shaughnessy's is not as busy as it used to be, so they really don't need the same crew that they used. Or do they keep the same crew, or have they?
No, I think they've adjusted
That's
their
what I'm saying,
staffing, yeah.
Right.
And vice versa, if we were to get 911 and still continue to do transfers, we'd have to completely readjust our staffing
Right.
because we would be, you know, have a different
Right.
commitment than what we currently have a commitment for.
They came on, I fell through the porch door,
Did you call them?
called 911.
Let me see what information I can get from them, and I'll talk with Nanette today and see if she can give me a printout on the times of the calls, something that we can maybe take a look at. Because, you know, I agree with you, you know, I'd much rather have 2 people on, 2 crews on 24/7. Because, you know, just waiting that 10 minutes, you know, that could make a difference between life and death. You know, versus waiting for 10 minutes for them to come in versus already having a crew there, that second crew that immediately could be going.
Yeah, I mean,
Been there, done that.
yes, that is better.
Mhm.
Is that a necessity based on the fact that that is a 10-minute window of a 24-hour day, where that would be an eventuality? In fact, it's a 1-minute window, and then it's a 9 minutes, and then 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So back to same level of coverage, max, you know, number of bidders, right? So that's what I'm trying to hit. And if, like I said, you guys, if you win the contract, are gonna be 20, I mean, I assume 2 ambulances 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Another company may say, hey, this works great for us, we're gonna have, you know, so it's just a matter of trying to hit this number and not spending the pieces, another 2 weeks doing research on call volumes and stuff, so that's where my current frustration is, so.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be hard for them to bid till we get this lined out,
Yeah,
obviously, because it could make a big difference.
well, yeah, that's why we're putting this out,
Well,
so.
but I don't think, we can't leave it like this, I don't think.
This may be
I
a
can't-
stupid question, but if whoever wins, the other ambulance still gonna be in business?
Probably not.
Just ask.
Right,
It
so I mean,
could be, or
that's part of
it
the
could be.
calculation, right?
But you're assuming there's only gonna be 2 bidders.
Right.
I think,
I'm assuming there's gonna be more
I
than
think so
2
too.
bidders.
I hope so, I certainly do, right? So we have 5 or 6, if they're all quality, that'd be great. You have to factor in, you know, Verizon's not gonna go out of business, or they're not gonna leave the area if they don't win a contract. Is that the same for Shaughnessy's? Probably.
And I think it should stay within the state, that's just my point.
Well, and that's a separate issue.
I know.
So
I agree.
that's, you know, we go back to this, and so if, you know, Carl, is Carl the only one that wants to break this down further, and, you know, do we wanna, I mean, there's nothing else here, if we make a decision and we wanna put it on there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 2 ambulances, that's fine. I think that's going to be a cost calculation. The way it is, the change that was made here is something that, you know, has worked in the past for the last, you know, since Dee was in charge of the ambulance service. So that would meet the requirement of same level of service.
Might have worked, but we can maybe better the
If
service.
you can make it better, you can also make it more expensive. So, you know, and
It could-
how much
well,
coverage are you
hold-
going to?
More expensive, well, we're already like at the max, almost at the max levy. And it
Well,
can't go any higher
We're
than that.
bidding this, right?
Right,
And so we wanna know, we want everybody to bid, and they're gonna run the numbers, right?
right.
And so there's a difference in my mind between the way it's laid out here and what we're talking about. Meaning that this, that has its set in green, maybe not perfectly, but stated in green, is a cheaper option, will come with lower bids. So the question to us is the status quo sufficient, or are we willing to have the taxpayers pay more for more coverage?
Can't pay much more, can you, Carl?
Again, we're bidding this, so the expectation is we're going to get lower bids and pay less. But less will change based on what's required.
So that's our specific purpose, to get a basic requirement of what we want, period, right?
Exactly. And so my starting point is maintain level of service and encourage as many people as possible to bid by not putting extra stuff in there or have more things that have cost concerns. That's why I really appreciate both services here talking to me to, you know, have me as an ignorant layperson try to lay this out. So, you know, I don't know if, you know, pulling numbers and running through call volumes is gonna inform us, you know, is it gonna be worth the time spent to do that?
Well, we've got 3 months before the end of the contract, right?
Yeah, but you gotta give people time.
Well, I realize that, but of course, there again, to get that information, I can have that probably today or tomorrow, but then we don't have another meeting for 2 weeks.
Well, we've done most of the stuff, you know.
Unless
John
you
and I
have
got
a
together
Thursday
twice.
night meeting again, but
It's basically just me taking time out of my work to write this stupid ass thing. So that's where I'm gonna like, okay, the good idea fairy is coming around taking a shit on this, and I'm like, let's find a reasonable place to, you know, plant our flag, write this, submit it, and give people time to do the calculations, put their bids in. And that was why the
What
whole.
you could do, you're just kind of thinking outside the box a little bit. You could leave it as is, because that is what you currently have in the county.
Mhm.
You're gonna strike the last sentence, or presumably you're gonna strike the last sentence of a third ambulance crew staff during daylight hours is preferred. You could ask in the bid specs, or maybe not even ask, but, suggest that the bidder put what their current and proposed staffing models would look like with a contract, and then that would give you, as the reading the bids, to evaluate the services, you know, a little more fairly, I guess. Whereas you say, you know, if
What
this.
you got to offer above and beyond what's stated here.
Correct, yeah. You know, if service A has a third ambulance during business hours, but service B has 2 that are 24/7, and service C has 5 trucks that they can pull in from neighboring counties, those are things that you would need to put out on the table to compare service to service. So probably, you know, the contract lingo or the bid lingo is probably okay, because that's currently what you're getting for your money, and that's what you wanna stay the money around. If you know, and then you could have a checklist maybe of when you're comparing service to service, and they give you their staffing models or what their proposed staffing models were if they were to get the contract, then that maybe would give you a little bit better comparison.
So you're saying basically leave it the way it is, and then when we get the bids in, if you wanna go beyond what's in the sheet, then that would be something that would maybe help you get the
Determine whether or
contract.
not you get the
Correct, yeah.
contract.
Yeah, I would need to write mine maybe a little bit more
Which sounds.
fully for you to be able to evaluate what my plan is.
Right,
Cause you know, you may think, oh, they're doing transfers, so their ambulances are gonna leave the county, and that may hurt the county, but it would behoove me to write into
Right.
my contract a lot better,
extra. Right.
yeah, of what I plan to do with that type of
Right.
thing, I guess, is what I'm saying, if that helps, Derek.
Cause
Thank you.
somewhere in here, it doesn't say it's the lowest bidder,
It
there's,
says lowest and the most qualified, then.
uh,
There's
responsible,
two things, I think.
somewhere in here. I
Yeah,
thought we
we-
had it.
The successful bid should be considered as the lowest and most responsible
Right.
bid.
Which means we run, I take the lowest.
Yeah.
Well, the most responsible.
Most responsible.
Someone, that doesn't mean the lowest.
Well, and that, it's twofold, right?
Lowest-
So
lowest
you can
and
come and say, hey,
responsible.
I'm gonna provide you with 6 ambulances staffed 24/7 for the max bid, so
Mhm.
that would be the most qualified,
Right.
but not the best fit for us.
Right.
Right.
So that gives us some room to make a, informed decision. Okay. So, with that piece in mind, if I put in the boldface, just prior to the contract section, that, the following are, required minimums. Bidders are encouraged to lay out their proposed level of service and staffing. And then does that
Sounds good.
meet everyone's intent as far as leaving the language as is minus the 3rd ambulance and from 4 down to 3?
Yeah.
Sounds good, yeah.
Carl? Good with that? Okay. Mutual aid was something that was modified, so look through that. Your thoughts?
That'd be like Allen County or something, right? Is that what that states, like tolls?
Now, and there's some that make sense that would, unreasonable, and so, and there's situations like where, if you're not able to get a written mutual aid, as long as that's provided, saying, hey, we reached out, they said no, whatever, take that on board. If it's just it's an Indiana, ambulance company, licensed only in Indiana, they really can't render any mutual aid to us in Illinois, under reasonable circumstances,
Would this
so.
apply to northern Edgar County also, in this case here? If we need an extra ambulance to call in and come down, is that a possibility?
That would be the mutual aid,
Okay.
yeah, that's.
How it reads, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody, any issues with that? Okay, 10 is just kind of the extra stuff in no particular order. Talks about, that's actually language from other contracts. Fires, hazmat on the first one, community events on the second, training for the third, attend county board meetings on the fourth. We talked about this one, I don't know, at a certain point, it becomes a little ludicrous. I don't know what the number of days of advance notice, I mean, it'd be nice to have, 720 days of advance notice, but, that's stupid, so.
What's the buyout clause there? Was it?
Well, somebody mentioned that language, I didn't have the time or the inclination to write that out in proper legalese, but, whether or not that is why I put it on there was, is that something we all think is necessary? Or is the previous one based on give us some warning, is that's gonna be sufficient? Because I don't know how that would work. So let's say ambulance company A wins the contract, they're in service for, year and a half, 2 years, they get bought out by, you know, National Ambulance Company, G, you know, are they, how does that work? Are they basically, I would assume that as part of the language of the contract and the buyout, a contract in place that is providing income would be part of that deal, and obviously they would just fall into that contract. Now, that's just me thinking out loud, whether or not that's the case, I don't know. I can look and see if, I just didn't have the time this morning to do that, with, you know, if there's verbiage in another contract that lays something out that's reasonable, if that's worth putting in, I can. Does anybody have any thoughts
Did
on
that
this?
happen with D. Bergen? Is that how that worked when D took over the ambulance service?
He bought it from the county.
Yeah. So that basically was part of the.
You mean when he sold it to them, did they take over a contract?
I don't know how that was.
And that's real possible too. I mean, if you get, I don't know who, Airbag, they bought an ambulance service. So that's, you know, if someone else purchases, if you get some big contractor in here and someone else purchases it.
See, I think we need to have something in there that we have to agree to it.
Yeah.
You know, that if we don't agree to it, then,
Right.
you know, I just have a problem with that.
Any,
Like I mentioned the other night, you know, I have a problem with someone would come in, if Eric has a contract, buys him out, and some big corporation from Chicago comes in,
Everything could be changed.
you know. I mean, I know they would have to abide by that, but I think we have to be agreeable to it.
I don't know if that's, seems like awfully big brother as far as that goes. You know, like, if I get an offer to sell my company, and it's, you know, a good offer, or is the county able to say, hey, you can't take that because, you know,
I don't think you would necessarily say you can't do that. I think upon that, I don't know whether you'd say you wanted,
Honor the original contract.
yeah, we had the,
that would be implied, I think. I mean, again, this is probably questions for Mark, but, you know, I don't, I think that's, you're on some thin ice there, you know, or a slippery slope, because,
here's the deal. This is kind of like our elevator contract that we got. We got it with, our elevator contract is with Amco Elevators. But ThyssenKrupp bought them out. And they said, well, we just assumed all their contracts. Well, I don't have a contract with ThyssenKrupp. I have one with Amco Elevators. When you guys sold out, and at the time, anyway, that's somewhat,
yeah, so I think, you know, part of that just goes back to having a contract that has all the, you know, things we require in it, and doing a good job there as much as we can. So, you know, I think you're gonna run into trouble if you start putting in verbiage saying you can't or you shan't when it comes to selling a business, or, you know, I think the warning piece is, you know, probably about as far as you can go there, or as a, give us a heads up and notice in writing, you know, and whether 120 is excessive, I don't know. It'd be nice, but, you know, usually
I
those things
suppose,
happen pretty
yeah,
fast.
as long as they're still meeting the terms of the contract,
Right.
I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Right.
If they're not meeting the terms of the contract, then there's another
And that's-
reason you can,
That's part of this piece is we, you know, part of our risk with doing any of this is we're exposing ourselves to change, right? And some of those things we don't have a lot of control over. And so, you know, Shaughnessy's currently have some things that we've talked about as far as, you know, what's in the contract and what they're actually doing as pertains to that 24/7, 2 crews, whatever. They're also doing a lot of things that are kind of above and beyond, which is nice to have, right? Now, there's nothing in the contract as it's currently written, as we're trying to write, that has any of those nice to haves in there, and that's for a reason, right? And so, you know, it's all this dance we're doing and trying to get, you know, the kind of perfect balance between what's a reasonable cost and a reasonable cost to anybody who's gonna bid and maintaining a level of service to a certain company.
Right.
So, I mean, that's all I can do with any of this is kind of keep going back to that, is are we striking that balance? And so, you know, if, you know, I guess, and part of it is, you know, if nothing else, we put in as much as we can and understand that, you know, it wasn't too long ago that people were being picked up in hearses and being run to the hospital. So, you know, I'd say that in jest, but that's part of this
Oh,
too.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember, or younger.
we don't have a team of lawyers to draw up these contracts, we don't have private contractors that are telling us all this stuff, it's just this operation where you got some dude sitting in his Edward Jones office typing out contracts, so.
Let's hope he never has to use it.
A stroke out in my office when I test out the ambulance, I try to put it together, so. Anyway, so I'll go through and I'll look at what's available. If there's something that makes sense and is germane, I'll let you know. So with that, I'll make those revisions. We'll see if I can get those submitted to everybody. I'll see if I can find time this week to talk to Mark if what I got in place, and I'll try to get this thing published within the week or so. So if you've got that information you want to get to me, if you see something particular, but I think what we came up with is a pretty good in between, at least as it seems to me.
When's the bid go out?
That's what we're just talking about. So, you know, hopefully within a week.
Okay.
So there's a lot to do between now and then. So there may still be big sticking points, but I'll do my best to communicate to everybody and let you know what's going on. Anything else for me on any of that? That's all I got. Nothing too exciting at the airport. Okay.
You got anything?
You got anything?
No, I'm fine. Did we discuss the sheriff's contract?
No,
Are we in a position to sign that now?
not yet.
Okay,
By the end of the week.
that's fine. I just wanted
Have you had time to review it?
Yeah, I brought them, I didn't know if you guys were gonna be able to do anything today, so I've got them, but
Do you feel like they're, all the corrections?
I think
are-
everything's, yeah, I went back through and read that red line copy. Of
I started on it, but I haven't completed it, but what little I've
course,
went.
right now, another week's not gonna,
Make that much difference.
Right,
yeah, we're not gonna make the payroll
Right.
anyway this time, so it'll have to be
yeah, another
next
week's
time.
not
So
gonna.
I'd rather have
End of the week, or
everybody
however you
be
wanna do it.
totally comfortable with what
Yeah.
it says.
I know the back pay, but don't we have to adjust the health insurance?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
for 2 years, well, part and parcel of 2 years.
right.
Yeah.
Does Don have all those figures and everything, or you have to?
Actually, they come from your office, don't they, Jeff?
Yeah.
And then they double check them?
On the insurance,
No, on the payroll, right?
I don't know, I thought Don was working on them the other day, but, well, he, I mean, he might have got what he needed from our office. to
That's
do
what
it.
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
okay.
Right,
Because he sent me a message one day last week, fair done yet, and I said, no. He said, well, I needed, kinda wanting to make plans whether we needed to do it this week or the next, it's gonna be the next one. I said, well, it'll probably be the next one now, so.
okay, all right. Okay.
Jeff, you having trouble getting the applicants for the security job at Shiloh? I kinda read the thing in the
I'm
paper.
having trouble getting applicants qualified.
Okay, all right. Just wanted, I read the article.
Which part of the tie-up, and that I had a couple, and maybe still have a couple people interested over the, of course, the city has made their decision on their new chief, so I don't know if that's gonna help me out or hurt me or what, so.
Okay.
Jeff, did you have anything?
No, well, just going on with that, I did get in touch with the Douglas County Sheriff. And, you know, I'm not sure if we can hire somebody the way we're calling it a part-time position.
Mhm.
You know, I have part-time guys work for me from out of Edgar County, that, with Douglas County being a major, you know, probably half the school population.
Right.
So I did open up to them, kind of broaden the applicants a little bit.
So probably not gonna be done this year, during the school year. Well, it's
I
kind
mean,
of
it-
stupid anyway.
I think it's gonna-
anyway.
At
Yeah.
this point, by the time we get somebody in, it's gonna be a, you know, 2-month
Start
job,
on
and
next year.
so hopefully we can have something, you know, when school starts next year.
Right.
Okay. I really don't have anything else at this
Okay.
point. Me personally, I assume you've covered everything you need to cover. I
Yeah, we
apologize
talked
for being.
ambulance and then talk about the courthouse and the architect and the restroom and the,
And you got with,
Corey?
I'm sorry,
Ross.
Carol, Ross.
Ross, yeah, I talked to Ross.
Okay, good. Good, so everything's moving along there.
But I told him I'd like to have something concrete that we can pass at the next board meeting, but
Okay.
for,
Whether it be a
put
bid
bids
or,
out.
right.
And he said last time he put the bids out, he only had the one place out there, oh, it's the only one that answered.
That's-
I said, put in, kinda adjust your specs to what you think we need to put out there, and then we'll do that.
Right. Well, I don't want us to have to cover ground again. I just
Right.
wanna make sure that everything got discussed that needed to. Do we need a closed session for anything? Everybody else doing okay? Is John doing okay?
I'm just leaving for the Welsh countryside, so.
The Welsh countryside,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, London,
Okay. Well, I entertain a motion to adjourn then.
but.
Opposed? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed, nay. You